What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Welcome, everybody, to the Awakening World. It's our Friday night edition, and I'm so delighted to have all of you joining us. I want to welcome those of you that are in our Zoom room. I see a lot of our friends, and I see some new friends with us as well. So for those of you in the Zoom room, and also those of you watching on Facebook or on YouTube, tell us where you're from geographically. It's really fun to see because we have people from all over the world. And this particular weekend, I am really proud because it's one of our most culturally diverse groups of people we've ever had, especially as we go through Saturday night and Sunday. We're going to have people streaming in from 8 different countries this weekend, all streaming in live, people of all different backgrounds, on the topic of being a modern day mystic, or perhaps an urban shaman, dancing with the divine. And we want to hear from all of you. How do you dance with the divine? What do you call the divine? That which has 1,000 names. Rumi called it the eternal beloved. I always like that one. So we want to hear from you. We're going to make it a very interactive show tonight. I've got great guests. You're going to meet them in a minute. And for those of you who are watching on one of the Facebook groups and pages or on YouTube, come on into our Zoom room. It makes it easier for us to interact with you. And you're going to want to chat back and forth with our amazing presenters. We've got a great group of people. And it's easy to come on in. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com. Globalpeacetribe.com. Register. It'll take about a minute. And then you go into the system. You'll automatically get an email that'll give you all the Zoom room links for tonight and tomorrow night and Sunday morning. And those Zoom room links are the same links all the way through till April 1st. So that way you can come to all of the shows we're doing. And we've got really great shows every weekend. Every weekend we're doing great stuff with amazing people. And we choose interesting topics, but what really makes the shows work are the people you're about to meet. So with no further ado, I'm going to bring on, she has been my partner on Friday nights doing shows for 2 years now. Welcome, Trish.
Hi, everyone. I'm very excited for tonight's show and to speak to some of Scott's beloved, most, like, what did you call them earlier? Like the people that have, you had a good
All-star. They are my semi-enlightened all-stars.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about that. I do want to read the definition of mystic because I was like, what does mystic mean? And so a mystic is a person who seeks by contemplation and self-surrender to obtain unity with or absorption into the deity or the absolute, or who believes in the spiritual apprehension of truths that are beyond the intellect.
Thank you for sharing that. Maybe if you can, if it's easy to pop it in the chat box, pop it in the chat box.
I'll do that.
Um, and I look forward to hearing how you dance with the divine, my dear friend Trish. The next person I'm going to bring up, you have seen him probably, those of you that are regulars, you've seen him dancing away on every Saturday night, Alive and now The Awakening World. And it is our beloved wild abbot of the Mystic Monastery. This is Jerry Anderson coming to us from Puerto Rico. Um, Jerry is the steward of 10,000 acres of pristine land. He actually, it's his own evangelical nation built, dedicated to St. John the Baptist and really truly dedicated to the mystical path of life. And people that have met Jerry through Saturday Night Live and now The Awakening World have gone out there and are like living there and helping to create community with Jerry. So we're going to learn all about the Mystic Monastery and some of Jerry's influences. And Jerry, I'm so glad you're with us tonight.
It's a joy. Share with the great tribe we have.
It's a beautiful tribe. And we've got people, I'm just looking right here, we've got people from California, British Columbia, Tennessee, Maryland, Miwok Land, up here in the Bay Area, Santa Rosa. And let us know, continue to let us know where you're from, everybody. I see so many of our regular friends. It's really, really fun. And I'll check the Unify page in a minute and see where we get people from there. Okay, next introduction. This is one of my best friends. If you want to know like who Scott chooses to spend social time with, this is like my favorite person to spend social time with when he's not meditating. This is Jonathan Robinson, and he has been on my shows a couple times before. You may have seen him before, but for those of you who don't know him, he is a very amazingly prolific author. He just finished his 14th book. Most of them are bestsellers. He's been on Oprah Winfrey 4 times. But the thing especially about Jonathan is that he has always been fascinated with spirituality and mysticism, and he's had a fascinating life and a fascinating history. And he has a podcast now where he interviews most of the amazing spiritual teachers and spiritual leaders of our time. So, Jonathan, you have a lot to share with us in this topic as well.
It'll be a lot of fun. I hope to share a lot of very useful information and maybe some methods to get people to do a little deeper.
Jonathan is definitely all about methods. Jonathan, something has changed in your audio from the time before the show. So check it because you sound a little muffled.
Is this any better?
No. For some reason you've gone muffled.
Your mic on then.
There you go. That's better. All right. Last but certainly not least, I get to introduce you to another one of my dear friends. This is Prema Gaia. And she's currently in British Columbia. She's been living in Costa Rica. She's off to England next week. And her story is fascinating. And we're going to hear her story, but I have asked her if she would be willing to start us off by leading a meditation. Would you be willing to do that for us?
I would absolutely love to. Thank you so much, Scott. And it's so nice to connect with all of you here on the show tonight. So I'd love to invite us all to put one hand over the heart and one hand over the lower belly. And would just love to invite us all to take 3 of the most deeply attuned and self-loving breaths that we have taken so far all day, right into the center of the heart. So big, slow, gentle breath into the heart. And exhale with a sigh. Letting go of the day, letting go of anything that has come so far today, just fully letting it go to create space for what we are about to experience in this time together. Another deep breath in and just visualize that breath going all the way down to the perineum. And exhaling with a sigh, just letting go of anything that you don't need to be carrying. One more big breath into the center of the heart. And just bringing your awareness right into the very, very center of your beautiful sacred heart temple, and just feeling into all of the love and the beauty and the inspiration and the magic that can be found when you go right into the depths, the epicenter of your heart. Just breathing right into the center of your being and taking a moment to just rest there for a while. Exhaling anything at all that may have come up this week, that may have come up today, just letting it go, visualizing it, washing off of your energy field like water, washing off of your back in the shower. And then bringing the awareness down to the hand that's over top of the lower belly, inviting your lower belly to just soften and relax. And you can give your belly a little rub and just give your body a little wiggle to just fully come into your body, taking a moment to come out of the mind and come into the body in this moment. And bringing the awareness down to your root chakra and your tailbone, the base of your spine, opening up to your connection to Mother Earth below you. And just visualize yourself beginning to drop some roots all the way down from your tailbone, all the way down through all the layers of earth, all the way to the energetic heart of our Earth Mother. And just taking a big breath and exhaling as you sigh, and just feeling yourself resting into the embrace of our Earth Mother. You can visualize your roots wrapping around her energetic heart, just giving her a big embrace and feeling her energy rise up to meet you and embracing you in return. And just taking a moment to really feel your connection to Mother Earth in this moment, all of her beauty, all of her nourishment, all of her support. And breathing some of that beautiful, grounding, nourishing, uplifting energy up from the earth through your roots, back up into your root chakra and into your entire body and energy field. Breathing in deeply and pulling up some of that beautiful, nourishing earth mana into your body and your energy field. And feeling your whole energy field fill up with that red earth energy that feels grounding, stabilizing, supportive, and unconditionally loving. So that every single molecule and cell of your body is being kissed by the energy of Mother Earth and just being nourished and feeling that energy of unwavering support and love that is available to us from our connection with this beautiful, exquisite planet that we are so blessed to live upon. And bringing that energy up through the central channel in the center of our body, from the tailbone all the way back up to the heart, all the way up to the crown at the top of the head, and opening up above to your connection to Source, opening up to your connection to your soul, your higher self, opening up to your connection to your beloved ancestors, angels, and guides, and just opening the aperture to receive support and love and grace from Source, from the heavens, from the higher realms. Just visualize it showering down upon you. So much beautiful golden light and love, supportive, uplifting energy. Feeling that energy mix and merge with the red earth energy coming into your heart. You can visualize it like a yin and yang symbol, the golden light from Source and the red earth energy from below, just reminding you how truly supported you are by all of life in each and every moment. May we always remember how supported we are. May we always remember how truly loved we are. And may we always remember how precious we are. Aho. Blessed be.
Thank you so much, Premier God. Thank you. I would love to invite our friends on Facebook, on Zoom, to share what came up for you during that meditation. Is there anything you'd like to share? It's always lovely to see that. And our question for the night that we also want to hear from you is, how do you dance with the divine? What do you actually even call the divine? So we want to hear from you. By the way, I took a look, and check out on Unify. We've got people from Canada, the United States, Colorado Springs, Australia, New Zealand, Costa Rica, Los Cabos, Mexico, the state of Washington, Ottawa, Canada. I mean, I just really love how global this is as we all come together and share our different journeys. You're going to hear from people who have all had a really remarkable journey of life so far, a journey of discovery of what I believe is the most important relationship of all, our relationship to the divine, to the eternal beloved, to the Holy Spirit. And so each of these people have had a really fascinating adventure and story. And I'm going to go to our mystic abbot, Jerry, first, coming to us from Puerto Rico, from his beautiful land. And Jerry, like a couple minutes, if you can keep it to 2 or 3 minutes, tell us a little bit about your journey of discovery on the mystical path.
Well, my definition of mystic is empty. Empty of dogmas, empty of belief systems, empty of guilt, empty of shame, empty of PTSD, empty of everything, until you find your innocence, which is at that level that you're completely empty. And so, like Master Eckhart said, if you're looking for a path, you'll find a path and miss God. And really, that's a lot what happens on this planet right now, is people get all excited about a certain path and become, very zealot about, I might say, evangelizing their newest experience, and think that that's the only one. But the nice thing about the mystic path is it's extremely inclusive, includes everybody, every possible way, because the mystic knows every single path leads to the same light. So it's like, the mystic kind of embraces everybody to do what they do to get there, So it's kind of like what happens oftentimes is like somebody begins like to think that, say you have long hair, you think everybody should have long hair. That's kind of how religions and tribes and all this kind of stuff happens, and it kind of separates and divides. And so it's kind of the mystic's job to kind of like, maybe you might say, pull them all together. And one of the last things I'll say about the mystic path is that, this sounds very arrogant, but really the mystic is the only one who really knows the answer to the 3 eternal questions. The 3 eternal questions of how did we get here, who are we, and where are we going? And the mystic knows the answer to all 3 questions is the light.
Thank you for that. Thank you. I'm going to bring Trish on for a moment, and then we'll get to Jonathan and Prema, because I do really appreciate, Jerry, you're bringing up the concern of when we get excited about something and then we think that that's what everybody should be doing, or the people that aren't doing that or don't believe that are somehow bad or stupid or wrong. And there is so much polarization in our world. And Trish and I have done several shows now about reducing that polarization. So, Trish, is there anything you want to add or reflect back after listening to Wild Abbot Jerry, whom we love?
My first question, like the things that roll through my brain, look a little like, what is not the divine? That's the question, because I hold the belief that I'm like, everything is divine, everything is interconnected, we are all woven, that the human being the cultures that we live in has created the separation of it all. So that's the first initial thought that comes up. And the other piece is, it's hard not to get excited. Jerry, how do you not get excited about whatever it is that's happening? And you're like, oh my God, I'm so inspired right now. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah. So I'm hearing to find that balance of excitement and enthusiasm, but not becoming a zealot. Maybe
I also didn't answer your question, Scott. I understand that.
that's quite all right.
The
That's quite all
question,
right.
I answer it. I answered it with a question, and I know that what I was doing.
That is quite all
Um,
right.
But to answer your question is, for me, is to really see each other and ourselves as one. I mean, we've even parted ourselves out into my whatever this could be, or my anger, my frustration, the other person, whatever, so to actually see, to dissolve the filters in which you see the separation there is something really special. And to look, I know that we had a conversation with Jonathan just right before, is that to be able to like look at the places that cause the friction in you, and to actually find the pathway to your own inner mystical change, to your own inner connection to God. Like, that's the way in.
Yeah.
That's it.
Beautiful. We're getting some wonderful comments. We now have people from Belgium and more people from New Zealand and Joyce Glasgow. Here's something for you, Prima Gaia. It was an amazing meditation. I needed that, and I agree with Jerry. That's coming from one of our friends on Unify. Rochelle writes, omnipresence, connection with all, no disconnection. That's how she dances with the divine. And I like what Prashat wrote. Prashat writes on our Zoom room, well said, Jerry. I love what you just said about becoming empty. That's how I dance with the divine. Emptying myself, like an empty flute, surrendering and allowing the divine to move through me, channeling that energy as a mystical, intuitive dancer. Lovely. Karima writes, equanimity is important, not getting attached to highs and lows. And Anna Ohm writes, I'm writing my Egyptian winged beetle over my third eye as a reminder of my rebirthing process. So see, already we have all these beautiful ways that people are connecting with the divine. Well, speaking of beautiful ways to connect with the divine, Jonathan Robinson, if he's anything, he's playful. This man loves to play. He literally, one of his books is, I think, 101 toys, 101 gadgets that are fun toys to play with. And he gives me the best Christmas presents. He always gives me like really fun little toys to play with. And when I go to visit him, because I like visiting him in Nevada City, he always insists that, if I'm going to come visit, I have to like put away my cell phone so I can just be available to play or to pray or to meditate. So anyway, welcome, Jonathan.
Good to be here, Scott. And my toys are all to play with our mind or body, because the mind and body are really a doorway to spirit. And so, I like to try a lot of different things. As you know, I've interviewed most of the well-known spiritual leaders on the planet. And I always ask them one question: what's your greatest hits for getting into more love and peace? And so I kind of have a weird hobby of collecting those methods, trying them out myself and seeing what works. And, like what Jerry said, different things for different people.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that, if you'd be willing to talk about, is that you spent many, many years with a guru, with a very profound teacher. And that's a pathway for many people. And I'd just love for you to share a little bit about what that's like as a pathway to opening those doors. And then what's it like when you leave?
Yeah, I spent 26 years with him. And, gurus are a little bit out of vogue now, but it was very helpful for me, because sometimes they can give you feedback that you wouldn't get from your friends. So you know what your obstacles are. Sometimes they would we would do things like build a hospital in Turkey, and he'd put me in charge. I barely know what a hammer is. And you would learn, oh my God, I'm being thrown into the deep end of a pool. I better swim. I had a hard time with Christianity. I was brought up Jewish, and I didn't like the dogma of a lot of Christians. So he told me to become a Christian for a year. And after doing stuff like that, you kind of loosen up a little bit. And that was really helpful for me. And then when I left 5 years ago, then it's really a matter of what's true to me and what works for me, and not following anything other than my own intuitive guidance. And that's been very freeing.
Beautiful, beautiful. And was it hard leaving?
No, I think it's only hard if a guru makes you attached to him, but he made us more attached to our own inner wisdom and truth. So when I left, it was actually pretty easy for me, even though I spent 26 years there. And, I just went into my hobbies. I have a podcast called Awareness Explorers, and I just love interviewing enlightened people and finding out, how did you get to a place where you live in bliss and love all the time? That subject just fascinates me. And people have different ways of doing that. I always find that very interesting. So, whether it's dance or meditation or relationships or sex or drugs or rock and roll, I think experimenting really and finding new ways to the love within is really what we're here to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm loving all the comments coming in. Mystic Abbott, when he was talking about working with the guru, wrote shortcuts to the home office. That's what he calls upstairs. I always love that. Trish, anything you want to reflect back or ask Jonathan before we go to Prema?
Oh, it's just so good. I love all of the guests you pull in. I love your friends, Scott. Thank you for inviting me.
I give good friend.
You do. Jonathan, what are some greatest hits of the greatest hits? That's what can you give me a top 5 of the ones that work for you? And that's something that I really love, is that Jerry and you have both said what works for you specifically. And I think that's so important, because what might work for this collection of cells might not work for your collection of cells.
Yeah. Well, some of them take a bit to explain, but I'll explain a couple really quickly. One of the things I did was I made a list of everybody I've ever loved in my life, which was 60 people. And I spent a minute on each person just thinking how wonderful and amazing they were and how much I love them. Well, you do that for an hour, you're bathed in love, and you feel totally one with love. And it's a great little meditation. I also put together my favorite songs, the ones that really touch my heart. One thing I do, Scott knows I really love my dog. So every morning when I wake up, I tell them, I pet them, I tell them how much I love them, and we look in each other's eyes, and they kiss me, and I play with them, and then I love them some more. And that's a beautiful way of opening to love as well. So I think everybody has to find some way that really triggers these deep states in themselves, and do them every day if possible.
Absolutely. Anna Ohm actually wrote that her dog is her unconditional love guru. And I think most of us would agree that our dog, or perhaps Winston, the famous cat, they are our teachers, aren't they? They're just amazing teachers.
I wanted to say one last thing, is that, Jonathan, you ended not this last piece before I asked, but the piece before that, with a conversation about self-love. And Scott knows that this is one of my favorite topics.
It's what she does. She is the co-host of the SelfLove Show, Thursday nights, 10 o'clock in the morning. Be there or be square.
And it's one of the things is that what Scott, you taught me, is that the capacity for self-empathy is the capacity, you're cultivating the capacity to be empathetic and to love the other person from a place of actual love, the place of the acceptance, the radical acceptance of what is. Like, so if you can find that self-love inside, which isn't the arrogant form of love, you know, but the love of just being with, of accepting, of holding that being without making it, as Jerry said, without making it about, you know, getting excited, or what was the word that he used?
Jerry?
Without taking on, you know, and like
A
making
zealot.
it the single person's like everything, you know, like you have to do it my way. We now all have to go and do it Jonathan's way, write our list of songs, or, you know, love our dogs, like, and again, being in that self-love piece, moving in that divine, is also about finding the things that work for you. So I love,
Yeah.
thank you both.
There's something, because I've interviewed a lot of enlightened people, you know, Ram Dass, Dalai Lama, Adyashanti, Byron Katie, all those people. I always ask them, what was the single thing that helped you the most? The number one answer was being able to love the parts of myself that were upset.
Mm-hmm.
I found that pretty interesting, that they say everything dissolves in love. So being able to send that hurting part love. And the number two answer was gratitude. So I tend to focus on what has worked for a lot of people.
When we come back to you next time, because I want to get to Prema Gaia, but when we come back to you, Jonathan, somebody has actually requested for you to share your gratitude mantra. So you have a fan in the house. All right, now we're talking about really unique ways to, you know, discover love, discover self, discover the mystical path. And Prema Gaia has one of the most fascinating stories of anyone I know. And obviously we look at her and we see what an incredibly luminous being she is. But Prema Gaia made a really fascinating and pretty radical choice in her life. And Prema Gaia would love for you to share with people about your journey. Literally.
Thank you so much. Literally. Thank you so much, Scott. So in 2006, I had a pretty radical spiritual awakening. And the guidance that came through was to give away all of my possessions till I only had the clothes on my back and start walking. And so the guidance just was coming in more and more strongly as the days were passing and the weeks were passing. And at a certain point in time, you know, I was in a place in my life where I was very unhappy with the way that my life was, although I had been doing spiritual practices for many years. And at a certain point in time, I just was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go for it. And so I ended up giving away all of my possessions. It took me, I was 30 years old at the time. This was in 2006. And it took me 2 weeks to give away all of my possessions. And so what I did was I set up these free markets in the downtown area of where I was living. And I was just like, anyone who would pass by, I was just like, you can take anything you want, you know, my rollerblades, my stereo, my clothing, my anything. I was just like, just please, just take it. And so it took quite a while for all of my things to find new homes. And before that, you know, in my early 20s, I had been living sort of a glamorous lifestyle, fast-paced lifestyle, living in the Hollywood Hills, going to A-list celebrity clubs and parties like several times a week, working as a model and working in the entertainment industry. But at that time in my life, I still had no idea how to actually love myself. So I was using alcohol and recreational drugs as a way to numb the pain of not really having any idea how to love myself, or that I was lovable or worthy. And so my first awakening in 2001 led me to get into yoga and meditation, and I became a raw vegan and started getting more into spirituality. And then the second awakening in 2006, like I shared, I was guided to give away all of my possessions and start walking and take my modeling portfolio and put it in the recycling bin. And so that is exactly what I did. And I ended up walking over 350 miles. from San Marcos, Texas, all the way to Reynosa, Mexico. And I was just following Spirit's guidance, every step of the way, just asking to be guided and praying to be, to be led to the people I was meant to meet, and to the experiences that I was meant to have to find my soul path. I had two objectives on my vision quest. One was to meet and learn from the wisdom keepers and the sages that are alive on this planet, that are way showers for a new way of living and being in this world, a way that is more harmonious and loving and equitable for everyone and sustainable. And the other one was to learn how to live really close to nature, to learn how to live off of the land. And so it's a very long story. I'm not sure I'm not sure how to sum it up in a short little window, but I'll do my best. So I ended up walking sometimes as much as 30 miles a day. At first, my legs were very sore, but eventually I got used to it, and I would sleep outside on anywhere, on back doorsteps of churches, on a bale of hay, on a picnic table, on a rooftop of an apartment building. And I just walked and I prayed and I meditated. And it was actually a very incredible kind of Satori-like experience. I felt so much joy. I felt like for the first time in my life, I was free to be who I truly am, and not the person that I was trying to be to fit myself into the constructs of society and perhaps what family members might want for me to be. And so I had these amazing experiences of just like Satori moments of like laughing and crying, and everything was making sense. It was really quite ecstatic in certain times, and it was also challenging in other times too, but it was very, very a beautiful, life-changing experience. And I had my first experience during that time of meeting people who recognized me at soul level. And I met a group of people that were what I would describe as soul tribe for the first time in my life. I had never had that experience. I'd never had the experience of people seeing me for who I truly was. So it was just so enheartening and healing for me. There were people that, for example, like one person had tears streaming down his face when he heard what I was doing and why I was doing it. And he was just like, "Thank you so much for coming. I've missed you. Thank you for showing up." And another person was like, "This is so excited. Like, this is proof that the Aquarian age is really here, and like, just so grateful for your courage." And just this experience of meeting soul family for the first time in my life and being seen for who I am, it was so touching. It was just so life-changing. And I ended up hitchhiking over 20,000 miles after that, visiting sages and shamans and spiritual teachers and mystics, and going to intentional communities. As I shared, my real goal was to find people who are living embodiments of what is possible for a new earth, people who are living in a new way, and people who had wisdom pieces to share with me that I could then discover how to liberate myself, and then help in liberating as many other people as I can in this lifetime. And so the story goes on from there, but I will pass the talking stick back over to you, Scott.
Well, Deborah Perry wants you to write a book, and I agree. It's an amazing story. Rochelle on Unify is saying it was a holy pilgrimage. And Nancy is asking a question that many of us are wondering. How did you get food?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So in that same pilgrimage, I was guided to, I lived completely moneyless for 7.5 months. I didn't touch money at all. And so I gave away what little money I had left. And then I had this sadhana, this practice of I didn't touch money. I didn't use money, didn't interact with money. It was part of my initiation, I feel. Just teaching me a completely different way of living. So I was interested in learning about wildcrafting food. And so I did find an amazing teacher who taught me a lot about wild edibles, an incredible, incredible teacher. So I learned a lot about wildcrafting food. So I would wildcraft food sometimes. And then another thing that I discovered along the journey, because like I said, I didn't touch money for 7.5 months. Another thing I discovered along the journey is just how much resources and food is going to waste in the United States and most Western countries every day. And there's this entire movement called free culture, which some of you may have heard of. There's also another word for it is the Freegan movement. And it's this underground network that connects people who are living in a different way, connects them together and connects them with food resource recovery resources. And they're like, so I was sometimes would be dumpster diving. And for those who think, well, that sounds really, really gross. If you knew how much like perfectly untouched food was getting thrown out every day, or some of you may know that, then you'd realize like that was, that ended up being a really helpful resource for me, because I was on this journey of hitchhiking, like I said, 20,000 miles across Canada, America, and Mexico, visiting sages and shamans and spiritual teachers for about 5 years. And so that ended up being a really helpful resource for me. There's another thing called, there's free markets and free porches. Like there's certain people who have their houses where their porch is dedicated to free things. And they have day old stuff delivered and dropped off at these free porches. There's this whole underground network, which I would have never learned about if I hadn't gone on this pilgrimage. But, the universe provides in the ways that that we needed to. And so, since that time, I've gone on to become a writer, and I have re-entered back into the world of using money. And I have a very different way of understanding my relationship with money now. I see it as energy and a tool for being in service. And so, but it was an important part of my initiation to just completely surrender money and allow the universe to provide for me. And I discovered some incredible things that I would have never discovered otherwise.
Truly, the path of a modern day mystic, and that's why I'm so glad you're able to be with us tonight, and I'm glad you're back. I'm glad you're back in our world and with our particular soul tribe. And I certainly recognize. I remember when we met, there was like this incredible recognition.
Yep, right away.
So now you get to meet two more of my favorite soul tribe people, and actually three more. And so now here we are. What an incredible, eclectic group of individuals and souls. So here's a question for all of you. And now I'm going to ask the first question. I'd love for each of you to answer it. And then I'm going to take questions from our Facebook friends and our Zoom friends. What is a practice that has helped you that you can share with others when you're feeling isolated or disconnected? What's a practice when you're feeling isolated or disconnected? And especially when you're feeling isolated and disconnected from life, or even from God, or from, when you just are in that, another way of putting it would be when you're lost in the illusion of separation. When you're lost in the illusion of separation. And we can go in any order. Anybody who wants to respond to that?
I'll go. As you know, Scott, I specialize. I'm a junkie when it comes to methods. So I'll mention two really quickly. One is, when kids are really upset, they naturally scream and hit. And so I will do that. I will play some loud music and I will scream and hit my bed. And in 3 minutes of doing that, you are like reset. You ever see a 2-year-old have a tantrum? Well, it goes on for a couple minutes, then they're fine. Their parents are now freaked out, but the kids are good. So that's something I can do. And it's a short thing. Of course, there's like taking a bath or a shower. But I will play with my dogs. My dogs don't really understand my stories or my upset. And just seeing the sympathetic joy that they experience and playing with them. People that play together stay together. And I think that play is a real good way into a different state of consciousness very quickly.
Beautiful. I love that. And it's true. Have you all seen how about a 2-year-old could go, "Ah, doggy," right? They can change that fast. It's an amazing thing. So great start there. Thank you very much. All right. Who wants to go next? Who else has a tool or practice they want to share? Jerry.
Well, I would say that the main thing that I do is connect back to nature. Go for a walk in the nature, take my dog. I think that probably the biggest deficiency that humans have right now is a deficiency of nature. So, when the people just see square buildings and square roads and everything's all straight and everything, it doesn't take us to the nature level of how everything does connect. And sometimes just the silence of nature is just kind of like the most perfect healing connector for me.
Beautiful. That's so true, Jerry. That's so true. All right, Prima Gaia, what comes up for you?
Yeah, I would love to share one of my favorite practices if I'm feeling disconnected or isolated or out of touch with others or with the joy of my heart. One of the main things that I really love to do is take an unplugged day, or at least an unplugged half a day. So there's something magical in probably at least maybe 6 hours of just completely unplugged time. If you can't take a full day, at least 6 hours. Turn the phone completely off, turn the computer completely off. And if you can go somewhere where you can be alone and just kind of steep in your own energy and be in that communion with your soul for that period of time, and just ask your soul, what would you like me to do next? What would you like me to do next? And what would you like me to do next? And it can be all kinds of things. From time to time, I will also microdose with plant spirit medicine as part of an unplugged day, just to reset and come right back into the center of my being. And I will sometimes turn on some beautiful music. I have this playlist, which I'm happy to share at the end of the call. It's called a vibration raising music playlist that I listen to, and I dance, and sometimes I'll cry, and I might journal. I might do a self-pleasure practice to get back in touch with my body, my sensuality. And just really having that unplugged time to do whatever spirit moves me to do, where anyone who is close to me knows that I'm going to be unplugged for half a day or for a day. So they know not to expect to hear back from me during that time. And then I just go and let spirit move me on how to refill my cup. I might make some art. I might make collages, draw, or paint. And one of my favorite practices that I like to do at the end of my unplugged day is think about 1 or 2 people that I just utterly adore, and I like to write them a love letter. I can write it by hand if it's someone that I'm going to be seeing physically, or if not, then I just channel a beautiful love letter to them, and just by typing it and just feeling into all the things I adore about them and why and how I celebrate who they are and just cherish them. And by the time I'm done writing 1 or 2 love letters to my friends, and I've had at least half a day unplugged, and I'm listening to my vibration raising music, and I'm dancing and being with my soul, I will feel like a new woman. And I feel that practice is something that can be helpful for a lot of our listeners as well. Perhaps some of you do something similar.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, all of you. And yeah, Pushat wrote something very similar, actually. Here, I'll come on and I'll bring Trish on too. Pushat wrote, I try to do less doing, and shift more to being. But the beingness from the heart, not the head, and preferably in nature, or to try to do little acts of kindness, just small ones, but meaningful ones. And incidentally, this one came running up. I think it's because when he heard me doing my little imitation of a 2-year-old. But since we've been talking about, and Jonathan's been talking about the power of the dog and animal love, I figured I would share Mr. Boobles with everybody. So, Trish, do you have a practice you want to share?
Yeah. I'm coming at it from a slightly different approach. I'm so in my journey of getting to just being okay with what is. um, I've had some like early childhood trauma and kind of mid to late abusive sexual traumas and like lots of things. So I've kind of woken up with some patterning in my body of what some people call PTSD. And I've had to look at all of those things to find what works for me. And one of the things that has really helped me come back to myself is a system of two practices that I've been merging into. I'll give you a couple things. So one of them is part of the Gestalt awareness practice, and it's a practice of becoming aware, or they have a kind of a name for it, but it doesn't exactly, for me, feel like that's the juiciest name. And it looks a little like just stopping, taking a deep breath, and noticing. So I even get to say it out loud, regardless of if I'm with another person or not. So I'm noticing right now, and I notice what's outside of me, and I'm noticing using my senses, and I'm noticing the sensations in my body. And then I'm noticing feelings without story. So the intention here is to get out of the chatter, out of the story, and then get back into the body. And so I'm noticing, like, it would look a little like I'm noticing Prima Gaia's blueness in her space and her smile. And I'm noticing the sound in the room that I'm in. And I'm noticing the feeling that I get when I'm with all of you all. And I'm feeling I'm feeling some pain in my shoulder. So what it does is that it starts to reformulate your brain back into centering self and being with what is. And then I love, of course, the self-empathy practice, because when I'm disconnected, or when I'm feeling disconnect, like if I want to point the finger like, Scott, you're disconnected, then it's usually me who's the one that's disconnected. Like, I'm the person feeling the feeling, so I am the one disconnected. And so then I come back to, okay, self-empathy tool. I come back to, what is my body? What do I need right now? Coming back into that space and actually doing a self-resourcing from the place of what I need. And if I'm totally just off the wall, I have this one tool that I will go to Spotify or YouTube, and I will search Imagine by Ram Dass and Beretta of Glitch Mob, and I will just sit with those beautiful people and the soundscape, and I will just sit there and run that 20-something minute video as many times as it takes in the shower.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Trish. So I'll share mine. And of course, obviously, what everybody's sharing is so good. And also really enjoying the sharings that are coming in on Zoom and Facebook. What comes to mind for me is being of service to others. My mentor, Marshall Rosenberg, had a really beautiful quote. His quote was, "The greatest joy in life is contributing to the well-being of others." And I've added to that the greatest tragedy in life is not knowing that. The people that are unhappy haven't learned the joy of contributing to the well-being of others. They're still trying to fill this gaping hole. But being of service, and we can all find a way to be of service. No matter where you are in life, there's a way you can be of service. And so that's what comes to my mind. Think of someone who might be lonely, needing a phone call. Go work at a soup kitchen. Go out on, if you live where there are homeless people, go talk to homeless people. Hang out and talk with them. Listen to them. Connect with them. So being of service is what comes to mind. Lorna is asking you, Trish, to share links to what you listen to. And she has sent me that link of Ram Dass, and it's a great link, so I'm sure she will do that. Valerie writes, "I hear you, sister. I play Ram Dass on repeat also." sometimes Krishna Das. I was very blessed. I can honestly say Ram Dass was my friend. He and I helped start a camp together back in 1988 and 89, and I meditated with him at his house in San Anselmo, and was able to spend time with him in Maui before he passed. And definitely one of the great teachers. Okay, so I am going to kind of see what kind of questions are coming in, but our group is just so fascinating. So I'm going to bring all of you back on. And I'm going to ask each of you to pick someone in the group and ask them a question. So, what's something that you have wanted to ask Trish or Jonathan or Prima Guy? So, each of you gets to ask one person in the group a question, kind of based on what you heard. And none of this is rehearsed, everybody. This is just spontaneous fun.
I'm infinitely curious, so I have questions for everybody, but I'm going to ask you a question, Trish. And that is, first of all, I would like the link to the Ram Dass thing, but can you say a little bit more of what your self-empathy practice looks like in terms of what you say to yourself or how you get in touch with that when you're feeling out of sorts?
Well, I have to be honest, it's not mine. And you know where I learned it from? Scott Catamas. And I'll tell you just a smidge of a backstory is I was never really taught empathy or compassion up until when did I take the mentorship group? 2 years ago?
2 years ago now, yeah.
And that was one of the missing pieces for me. I actually got fired from a relationship coaching job, like a whole company that was like, you're not compassionate enough. And I was like, what do you mean? And I was mistaking compassion for sympathy or empathy. Yeah, compassion and empathy for sympathy and understanding. So to answer your question, the self-empathy tool, as I know it, Scott and I have some differences in how we like to share.
You've taken it and made it your own, my dear, which I
have.
appreciate.
And I've come from a place of the way that I teach it is coming from a place of looking at my own codependent patterning and kind of stepping from that. And so that's how I teach it. And so how it works for me is that, you give yourself permission to run the negative thought or the chattery thought for no more than 15 seconds. Because you know how that brain wants to just take it off, right? It wants to do the wheel and just, run the thought and do this with me. Like for everyone out there, do this with me. So if you have something that's up for you in your world and, whatever it could be, run that thought for just 15 seconds. It could be, I'm too whatever, or that person, or they, or and then drop into your chest and really take a nice deep breath into it as you drop into your chest and name the feeling, the actual emotion that's happening. Because you're, generally if we're feeling discomfort, it's name the feeling. And then from that, drop down into your solar plexus. And there's a want or a need or a value under that feeling, that emotion. Name that value, that desire that desperately wants to be met. And when you have it, say it out loud. So you can give yourself permission to just acknowledge it. And then from there, ask yourself, is there another person that is capable or willing, I'm morphing it for you, Scott, that could meet your need? Capable or willing. And I like to take it even a step further, is that even if that person is capable or willing, how can I meet that need for myself? And so for my case, how this runs, it looks a little like I'm too much, or I'm too little, or I'm scared, or this situation is causing my body to go into a trauma state. And then, like I'm running the thought, and I drop into my chest. I'm like, I'm scared and I'm nervous and I want, and I drop. It comes really quickly to me now. So then I'm dropping already into my solar plexus of my wants, needs, and desires. And then I'm like, oh, well, I want to feel safe and I want to feel connected and I want to feel like I'm here and present. And how do I do that for myself? That's where you get to show up in your own self-resource. And what are your strategies to self-resource your needs for connection? The self.
That's a great answer. Thank you. That was really helpful.
Mhm.
Great job, Trish. Great job. Okay, Prima Gaia, who do you have a question for?
I have a question for Mystic Abbot Jerry.
All right, how about
So
that?
when I heard that you are stewarding well over 1,000 acres, or I think much more than that, in Puerto Rico, that feels like such a huge honor. And my intuition is that that journey that led you there was divinely guided and probably filled with some amazing synchronicities or guidance. And I would love to hear a little bit about what that journey was like for you to find a land and to then end up stewarding it.
Yes, it came kind of, there's a Christian term called a burden. That means kind of like, you're kind of what your weight of your responsibilities might be. And it came to me about 10 years ago that we had a lot of young people coming that were, as I say, highly sensitive, empathic old souls that really didn't feel like they fit in this planet, and many of them exit because they think they landed on the wrong planet, okay? And I started to feel that many of them had come from many lifetimes as being monks, and that this kind of chaotic world just didn't fit.
Yeah.
So I started feeling that a monastery for these highly sensitive, empathic old souls was necessary. And I'll shorten the story because there was so much grace happened in the whole project. I was actually offered a place in Ecuador, which would have been a perfect place because it was an herb school with a farm, herb farm. And if you know about Ecuador, it's like the ultimate farming place, okay? And then another one in Ohio. But the nature in Puerto Rico was the one that spoke to me. And I was only originally given 330 acres. It was 1/10 of 3,000 acres. And it had never been cut up. So they asked me to explore it and see where we want our section of the 3,000 acres. Finally, I decided that it had to be the only flat area I had found in the whole 6 square miles. And so they said, draw it on the map. So I drew it on the map, and they said, that's 400 acres. I said, well, we'll just move one boundary. He says, don't worry. For the other 70 acres, we bought it for $90.
Whoa.
That was the first fingerprints of God. So when they took these papers to the government to register them, the really nice lady there said, do you know your land touches land that has never been owned, ever, on an island, okay? My man said, how much is there? And he said, well, it looks like 1,000 acres, but it could connect with more land that's never been owned. Well, when it was all done, it was 10,000 acres of some of the most sacred spiritual ground probably on the whole eastern hemisphere of the planet. This is the actual land where the mythology of the Taino culture, which was before Columbus, actually took place.
Wow.
So we're just covered with caves and mountains and rivers, and waterfalls, and we've agreed to protect 9,000 of the acres just for hiking and overnight little camping spots and so forth, but mostly it'll be just protected.
Wow. That's
A lot of
incredible.
grace. Yes.
What a beautiful and inspiring story.
Yes, yes, and it's been a crazy miracle because the legal team actually took it, like Scott just said, to an ecclesiastical nation, very similar to the Vatican sits in Italy. Our ecclesiastical nation sits in Puerto Rico, and so that's the separation of church and state again. It's
So in the next next few minutes when I'm reading to you, try to find a comfortable place.
Somebody already
Ramdas just joined us. We were just joined by Ramdas. That or so he was just saying he actually has, you have a seat at the United Nations, right?
3.
3 seats at the United Nations because he's got his own ecclesiastic nation. On
The
on
first unrecognized ecclesiastical nation that has ever entered the UN since it started.
Wow.
That's very cool. That is very, very cool. All right, Trish, it's your turn to ask a question.
Oh, okay. I have questions for everyone. I will ask a question to Prima. And gosh, I have a lot of questions, and now I'm just like filtering out which is appropriate. It's a little bit based on something you said earlier about your journey, and I'm doing a lot of decolonization work as for me personally, because being socialized as female, I've learned a lot of things, right? I've learned a lot of ways of being that I no longer find serving me or anybody else. And I don't remember I took a note down, hold on, of something that was mixed with yours. And I wanted to ask you a question about self-liberation. The note that I took down was the self-liberation through knowing self and dissolving the filters of social familial programming and dissolving identity is what I wrote in my journal. But can you tell me a little bit more about the layers of programming that you now are aware of that you didn't see before?
Yeah, what an amazing question. Thank you. So, yeah, like I shared, I feel that one of my biggest commitments and devotions in this lifetime was to do everything and anything that it took to liberate myself and to reconnect directly with source, with the divine, without and needing an intermediary between myself and the wisdom of source or the unified field, all of life. Something that I have just been so committed to, and so just known with every cell of my being that it was something that it's my destiny in this lifetime. And so at first I thought that perhaps I should, go do I studied the lives of mystics and sages for, throughout the ages. And one thing that they all had in common, or many of them, most of them, was that they would all spend extended periods of time in solitude, in hermitage, oftentimes in caves or in the mountains, in this process of self-discovery and self-reflection. And so at first I thought that I was meant to do one of my retreats up in the Himalayas in India, and I explored some different hermitages there. But what ended up happening was I ended up doing I did 2 20-day solo retreats, ended up doing them in New Mexico, actually. One was in a mud hut in Tres Piedras, New Mexico. And then the second one was deep in the Gila wilderness, where a friend packed up 2 donkeys and dropped me out deep in the Gila wilderness, where I wouldn't see another person or feel another human vibration for the entire 20 days. And it reminds me of what Mystic Abbot Jerry mentioned about being on land that's never been bought or sold in the history of this planet. And the etheric field there is so pristine. And that's what the Gila wilderness is like, being out there alone and just, being with the divine, being with spirit, being with all that is, being with the animals, being with the stars, being with the bird songs, being with all of the beautiful wild plants. And so those were some of the most fulfilling experiences of my life, although challenging. But that was where I discovered my gift as an oracle, which I believe that we all have the capacity of being an oracle. It's our birthright. We all have a direct connection to the divine. That is also our birthright. We don't need an intermediary between ourselves and God or source. And so to your question around basically like deconditioning my consciousness, my mind from the years and years of conditioning, imprinting, distortion that I had, and so many of us have experienced from the dominant narrative in our culture, the overculture. It's been such a deep process to unpack layer by layer the conditioning and the training, and also, like you mentioned, the trauma and the low self-worth and the pain, and the conditioning that has made so many of us mute our voices and keep ourselves silent at a time when the world needs to hear our voices so deeply, needs to hear our heart-guided beings speaking from their souls so that we can be part of the solution. And so one of the most powerful tools that by grace I discovered along the journey is working with the sacred plants, the plant spirits of this earth, which I describe as taking like a receiver of a telephone that's connected to the pulse of Mother Earth, the voice of Mother Earth, and putting it up to your ear and receiving messages that are specifically for your soul's path and your journey here. And so ayahuasca in particular has been one of the deepest allies for me, one of my deepest beloved friends and mentors and companions along this journey. And that has helped me tremendously in ceremony to unpack these programming pieces and this conditioning that kept me silent and depressed and anxious, and my voice was closed. The plants just helped me. They showed me how to love myself after walking around on this planet for 30 some years and having no idea how to love myself. I was shown in ceremony how to love myself unwaveringly. And that is one of the hugest blessings of this lifetime. And so there's so much more that I can share, but that's a start.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. And I'm loving the questions that everybody's asking. Mystic Abbott Jerry, you have not had a chance to ask your question yet. So let me bring Jonathan back up in case he's who you select. Who do you have a question for? Oh, you're muted, Jerry.
Sorry. I would like to ask each of them what their passion is and what turns them on in the morning.
Okay, so since it's each of us, we got to keep it kind of quick because I want to get to one more thing before and we're getting close. So, your passion and what turns you on in the morning. Well, I wake up to I have the two dogs, the one that you met tonight, and then the other one, Jasmine Bear. And the moment it gets light out, she comes and she gives me little kisses. And she's really gentle. They're really sweet. It's kind of like, are you ready? Come on. It's light out now. Come on. And we have our little thing, like if I really want to sleep more, I'll give her a little love, but then I'll turn my head away. And if I'm kind of ready to move up, I'll come up and then she'll come and she'll cut a little more. So that is how I start my morning. And it is a beautiful way. So that's my way. Jonathan?
Well, I also use the famous dog technique, but my dog sits on my chest and licks my face until I have to get up. And she weighs about 35 pounds, so it's very effective. But, I really love learning. And each day I try to learn something new. And that's what my passion is. And then taking that learning and turning on other people to some of the best things I've come across.
Beautiful. Thank you. How about you, Prema Gaia?
What is my passion and what turns me on in the morning? Well, in the morning, the first thing that I like to do to start my day is to take some quiet, still time to listen to the voice of spirit and to tune in with my guidance. And then I also like to do some movement. I just like to take some unplugged time to really get a chance to allow the voice of my soul to speak to me and guide me. But in terms of what my passion is and what makes me, turned on by life, I truly believe that I came here to this planet to be part of the solution, to be part of helping co-create a planet that is more harmonious, loving, kind, sustainable, and equitable. And so I believe that that's a two-part sacred assignment. One is doing the deep inner work to heal ourselves and come into the highest alignment that we can, also healing our family constellations and doing ancestral healing work. And then the other part is being in service. And I love recording guided meditations. I have a whole bunch of guided meditations that I've shared publicly. I love teaching. I love sharing what I've learned. It's one of my greatest joys. Now, I used to be very nervous to speak and to share and to teach. And now it's one of my greatest joys. So those are some of the things that put a spring in my step.
Beautiful, beautiful. And by the way, a little bit later on, Prima Guy is making her meditations available to some of us. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Trish, for some learning and passion.
Gosh, I'm just really, really excited in this lifetime. I am like, give it all to me. Bring on the discomfort, bring on the joy. I am both a crunch ninny and a bliss ninny at the same time. I'm like, bring it on. It's, Disneyland has its stuff. It's got the smells and the garbage and all the things. Like, yeah, bring it on. I love that stuff. I love the human stuff. So that's what delights me. That's what I'm like, woo, what's happening today. And what I'm passionate about in the world is really to help people live, to have choice in their perspective and in their sovereignty, to see their sovereignty. And which also looks like decolonization work, and looks like, helping people work through codependency, and, teaches people how to have better relationships and have better sex, like all of that.
Beautiful, beautiful. I realized I didn't talk about the passion part for me. And, when you guys watch one of my shows and you see that opening 2 minutes of The Awakening World, that video captures what I'm passionate about. I really want us to wake up. And like Prima Gaia said, we have to do it on an individual basis, and we have to do it on a collective basis. And we have to do our personal awakening work. And we also have to play whatever role Spirit has in mind for us to create this awakening world. So that's what I'm passionate about. Okay, I'm going to bring everybody back up. And there's actually two kind of remaining questions. So I'm going to mention them both.
Wait.
Yeah, Trish.
Jerry didn't answer his own question.
Oh, thank you, Jerry. What is the answer to your question?
The question that I ask?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, my passion is about service also. I think that there's hardly anything that can be more satisfying, especially eternally in this lifetime, than to do what the other members have said, to make a positive change, and to, let's say it this way, when we return to Earth again, it'll be better because we were here the first time.
Jerry, while we've got the spotlight on you, I'd like to ask you to kind of maybe share an overview of the path that everyone can, and you and I have talked about this, so I know that you have an answer for it. What's your overview of a path really that everyone can become a mystic?
Well, I would just say that as I go through this little path, everybody can find where they are on this path. I'll start with kindergarten and go to college, okay? Just kind of make it that way. And for me, most people in religions are still in kindergarten. And the reason I say they're in kindergarten because they still have identified God as being outside themselves instead of both. And so the real true student, when they start learning that no matter what religion they are, is God's name is I am. I mean, the tree calls itself I am, the bird calls itself I am, and it's really the breakthrough of the, you might say, the I is the small ego, and the am is the nothingness out of which we came and go back into kind of thing. The college program begins with and ends with creating the sacred marriage internally. And I call it our being side and our doing side, feminine or masculine, if you like that, are synchronized. And when they're aligned in the Creator's purpose for your life, then that's the college. That's the, Jesus called it the bridal chamber, whichever you want to call it. I kind of tell people, the monks, that if the Creator made you to be a refrigerator and you go to Earth and you act like you're a washing machine, it just ain't going to work. No matter how hard you want to be a washing machine, it ain't going to work. So we have to be what the Creator purposed us to be. And at that point, there usually is kind of a test. Jesus had his 40 days in the wilderness, and sometimes we call it the dark night of the soul. But there's usually a serious amount of tests at this point. And I guess the best description of a mystic is one who humbly wants to serve, has the desire to serve. And Jesus said it this way. He said, "Thy will be done." And people say that's a surrender, and it is a surrender, but I like to think of everything as a male and female energy. Surrender is a female energy. The male energy of surrender is when you embrace the reason you were created, the will the Creator has for you, and physically embrace that. And when a soul matures to the real understanding of oneness, they are then a mystic. Everyone becomes a mystic. And one of the things that happens at that level is, because we know lots about love, joy, and oneness, and these kinds of things, but the greatest aspect of the graduation from college is what I was just talking about, grace.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. All right, so we are kind of in the wrapping up time. So two things from each of you. One is definitely whatever you want the world to know, how to get Pramagaya's meditations, how to get Jonathan's podcasts, how to go explore the the mystic monastery. So definitely put in the chat box, and then I'll copy it and move it over to Unify and to Love Coach Academy. And then while each person is doing that, here's a question. A lot of people are asking about plant medicine. And I think almost each of you have mentioned it at one time or another. And I know that, so I'll start just by saying that if people missed last Friday night, in fact, this show was all about plant medicine, actually. And we had 3 extraordinary people on it who have institutions that are doing plant medicine for medical purposes, not just a shaman coming up from South America and leading ayahuasca ceremonies, which is a lovely thing to do, but people are actually doing that in a very institutional medical way. So go back and watch last Friday night's show, and I'll go find that YouTube link, and I'll pop it in the chat box in a few minutes. But I also wanted to, people have been asking, well, what kind of plant medicine? What are your recommendations? What are your suggestions? So I'll say one thing and then anything that any of our presenters want to add about it. Be careful not to get too attached to using anything just for recreational use. And I've been around, I'm 66, and I've been around the psychedelic scene for a long time. And psychedelics are what woke me up. My first LSD trip at 16 was one of the greatest days of my life, and it is when I kind of woke up. I didn't take the 5-year without money path. I took the LSD at 16 path. And so, psychedelics have been wonderful for me. And I was blessed. I was never attracted to cocaine or some of what I believe are the darker energy substances. But with anything, I have friends that I've watched take too much ayahuasca and get too attached to doing it every weekend now. I've watched friends my wife really was pretty hooked on ecstasy, and she had some great ecstasy experiences, but I didn't have to hide it because you'd want to take it every day all the time, which it's not healthy. So I just want to say that plant medicine is making this big movement, and it's becoming more legalized, and low dose, microdose, although you have to be careful when somebody says, hey, low dose, you'll barely feel it because you might have a little surprise there. Just be careful. Moderation in all things. Moderation in all things. So going to open it up to if anybody has anything they want to share about plant medicine. Just speak up.
Well, it's a very core part of what we're doing at the monastery. And it's one of the main reasons that we had to have the ecclesiastical separation of church and state so that we could have our own rules and understanding. And yes, they have to be called medicines for a purpose. They can't be like abused like, most sacraments around the world, whether it was tobacco of the Native Americans or wine of the Christian church or whatever, they all get abused at some point. So yes, our monks will be taught how to lead. I'm very unique in the way I lead those kind of journeys. I lead as invisible as possible. So they know that they're cared for. If they're thirsty or something, they can ask. But I am not going to ask any questions or expand on anything they say. I'll just nod my head.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, and while we've got Jerry, I am going to just start going to people's websites as well. So if you're interested in learning more about the Mystic Monastery, go to his website, and it's Mystic Monastery SJB. What does SJB stand for? Saint John the Baptist. So Mystic Monastery SJB.com, dedicated to teaching the monastic and healing. And one of the things that Jerry and I have in common is we really, really love Andrew Harvey. We both are great fans of Andrew. And of course, Andrew's been on my shows many, many times. And Jerry's kind of fun. Mark Denisovsky wrote all about how he has been reading Andrew's newest book, Engoldenment, A Year with Kabir. And he's been starting his day every day with a poem from Kabir. And so just want to acknowledge that wonderful book by Andrew. And Andrew is, for me, my favorite mystic. He is just any book by Andrew. Andrew's books are a wonderful way to explore the mystical path. Read his Gospel According to Thomas, or any of the Gnostic Gospels. Read his book, A Walk with Four Guides, where he talks about Maharshi and Jesus and Krishna. Andrew Harvey, he is such a beautiful, or go back and watch some of his videos that he's done on our shows. Jonathan Robinson, I'm putting the spotlight on you, my friend. Anything you want to share about plant medicine, low dose, or awakening explorers?
Yeah, well, I actually got my master's thesis on the therapeutic effects of plant medicines on PTSD. So I studied it a lot and found that, for a lot of people, it's really helpful to have a good guide, whether it be a therapist or somebody that's very familiar with these medicines. I think that's really important. And I found that when I've been guided or I've guided others, that you can really go a lot deeper than just taking it without that type of intention. And I also want to put a plug in for the medicine known as 5-MeO-DMT. I find that people who try that, their experience of God, their understanding of God increases dramatically. And but be sure that if you find somebody who you can do that with, that they know the medicine very well, because it is very intense.
Yeah.
And in terms of my podcast, there's 80 free guided meditations on awarenessexplorers.com, interviews with probably most of the teachers you would have heard of and what their best ideas are for awakening at this point. So it's all free, and feel free to dive in and get some really good guided meditations from some of the best spiritual leaders on the planet.
You know, I'm looking at the website. It's awarenessexplorers.com or awarenessexplorers.com, depending on how you see it when you look at the URL. What is it that sex jumped out at me when I looked at that? Um,
I've
I'm
never
outing
seen this
myself,
before. Thank
everybody.
you.
I'm outing myself here. Uh, but definitely go to Awareness Explorers. And yeah, I mean, Jonathan, you are so generous. All these beautiful free podcasts that you're providing, they really are wonderful. So thank you very much for that. All right, Prema Gaia.
Yes.
Anything you
I
want to share before we go? We will go to your website in a moment, but anything you want to share about just thoughts about plant medicine, do's, don'ts, thoughts, feelings?
Yeah. So I love everything that you shared about working with plant spirit medicine. The way that I always inherently work with it is as Mystic Abbot Jarrett said, it's a sacrament, approaching it with just the utmost of reverence, always with ritual and prayer and deep reverence. I approach plant spirit medicine like in a full prostration, like on my knees with reverence and humility. And yeah, really working with it in a very prayerful, very deeply intentional way. And I also do facilitate private plant spirit medicine ceremonies. So if anyone would like to reach out to me about that, my Instagram is prema.gaia, which I just put in the chat box. If you'd like to connect with me, DM me on Instagram. I'd love to keep in touch with everyone who feels inspired to connect. And the other thing I wanted to share is that if anyone would like to receive, I have a bundle of 10 of my most popular guided meditations and also this music playlist that I was talking about. It's called Vibration Raising Music Playlist. Really, really helpful resources. If you'd like to receive those, I'll be sending out an email. So if you'd like to just pop your email in the chat box, if you're on Zoom, you can pop your email in the chat box here on Zoom, and I'll email those meditations and the music playlist out to you. And if you're watching the replay or if you're on the Facebook live stream, you can either DM me on Facebook or DM me on Instagram at Premagaya.
Great. And so again, I pulled it up while you were talking. Here is her website. Beautiful photo. Prema Gaia, Premagaia, premagaia.com. And I like how she asks, communicate your message in a compelling, magnetic, and soulful way. And everybody go down there and give her your name. I mean, just go down and put in your name, email address, and she's going to send you a copy of her masterclass. And it's also thank you very much for your generous offerings. I'm going to keep us on for another minute or two so people have time to put all of their email addresses on. So, Trish hi, Trish. I really want to encourage everybody to, if you're not already listening to the Self Love Show, I listened to it yesterday. I listened to it as much as I can. I have it in my calendar so I don't schedule something else Thursday mornings at 10 a.m. Because she and her partner Dawn have wonderful guests, many of whom you've seen on my shows or on this show here. Tell us about the Self Love Show, Trish.
Well, the Self Love Show is a free resource for anybody who wants to do their inner self-love work. And it's everything from conflict work to dream work to, I mean, we've had amazing shows. There's been some sexuality shows. There's been some, I mean, we're everything around self-love and acceptance. And as you know, that's one of the big juicy pieces for me. I do want to answer the question too, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I didn't come to my spiritual growth work through this way. It just sort of I happened upon, I was like the weird kid in my Montana school trying to levitate during recess. I still have yet to get there, but I'm close. And how I came to medicines was through the place that Scott you shared, was to be very cautious of, and it was recreational. And what I got from it was something really powerful, a deeper insight of self. But how I see it now is a tool to be used with high respect, and not all the time, but a tool for me for integration, a tool for the weaving of this reality, the body and the spirit, if that is something that you need. I have a friend who has these amazing little mushroom microdoses that have lots of different mushroom, like beneficial mushrooms, that I take every so often. And, I think microdosing for some mood or some sensitivities that people have is a really good balancer as well.
Beautiful.
Proceed with caution and proceed with respect.
And in the truth in advertising and promotion, her Christmas present to me was this little round container. And it was funny because I got this like little jar of capsules from a name I didn't know. I didn't know what they were. And then Trish came and visited, and anyway, I showed it to her, and she explained that this was low-dose mushrooms, and I have now taken them 3 times over the past little bit, and it's very nice. It's very nice. Thank you. All right. Well, it's been a really fun show. And obviously, I hope you all can tell how much I love each of these beings. And based on the comments flying in, you are most beloved by our friends on Facebook, our friends here in Zoom. I want to thank John and Summer Raymer for putting us out over the SINE network. That's the SINE network. They do a great, great job. And I want to just take a minute to promote the next 2 shows that we're going to have. Tomorrow night, Saturday night, it's the same theme, modern day mystics, intimate experiences with the divine. And my co-host, first time she's co-hosting with me, is Sister Jenna. And Sister Jenna is a gem. Some of you might have seen her. She hosted the Unify 22222 event on Tuesday. And she's just a very beautiful, high vibration being. She's this East Indian woman. She's coming to us from India. And we're going to have people coming to us from all over the world tomorrow night, and again on Sunday. So join us. For those of you that have subscribed and you get the Zoom room, definitely come in at 5:30 for our early Zoom room chat with Sister Jenna and myself, and you're going to meet some really wonderful, wonderful people. And then on Sunday, we wrap it up, and we're going to wrap it up with modern day mystics becoming an urban shaman. And people from all over the world. It's a really cross-cultural group of people. We've got Arika, who will be coming to us from Costa Rica. Don Jorge Luis Delgado, Trish knows him. He was on our show before, coming from South America. Arena Morrison, who is part Maori, coming from Australia. And Astarius Miraculi, who's this beautiful brother. He lives here in California, but of African heritage. So it's going to be a really wonderful way to wrap up the weekend. So please do join us. The last thing I want to say is this whole weekend was sponsored by a brand new book that just came out. It's an anthology book by Sister Jenna and many of her friends on meditation, Tales of the Divine. And it's these beautiful stories of how people have, through meditation and through practice, had connection to the divine and how it's changed their lives. I want to encourage people to just go to Amazon, put in meditation, Sister Jenna, and buy the book. It's a beautiful book. It's inspiring, it's practical, and it's wonderful. So there you have it. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. I will save the chat, and I will send the chat to all of our wonderful presenters. I love each and every one of you so much. And have a beautiful, beautiful evening, everybody. And for those of you watching the recording, we love you. And I recognize that about like thousands of people watch our recordings on YouTube and on Facebook. So we love our people watching the recordings as well as people joining us live. Good night, everybody. Have a great weekend. Hope to see you.